The views and opinions expressed by callers, guests, and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of the Black Talk Radio Network and Black Talk Media Project. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium. Good evening and welcome to Black Talk Radio News. This is Scotty Reed in for this broadcast on this March 25th. On this day is actually International Remembrance Day for the victims of the transatlantic slave trade. So definitely want to give a shout out to Sister Vicky, who hosted a race treaty last night, co-hosted it with Brother Robin Benton, and they talked about that day's events are happening, especially some events that she mentioned going down in Chicago. So do want to acknowledge that today is International Remembrance Day of the victims of slavery, particularly those who were victims of the transatlantic slave trade. So my name is Scotty Reed. I'm broadcasting from behind the enemy lines that I call USA Inc. This is a news, hot topics and information program. If you have anything you would like to share with us as we go through our topics and news stories, you can give us a call at 866-510-9025. That's 866-510-9025. Hit star to unmute yourself. I'll hear you or either see you, and we will come to you and get your views on whatever it is we're discussing for tonight. So the top stories or top news topic that I'm going to save for later, but I want to tell you about now, is CEO Donald Trump. It was last year, and I probably will have to pull up the audio from not last year, but last week, last Friday night, where he gave his weekly address. So for those that missed that, he talked about praising or laying a wreath, and he was praising President Andrew Jackson. And I can see why he identifies with Andrew Jackson. I think Trump is of Irish descent. Andrew Jackson was Scot-Irish, who was actually from this area where I'm in right now. He was not from South Carolina. He wasn't born on his uncle's plantation. He was from right here in these parts, now known as Gaston County. And I know a little bit about that history. And it is said that he only claimed to live there is because he wanted to portray himself as a resident at one time, or being a homeboy in South Carolina, when South Carolina was talking about the first time they was talking about succession and pulling out from the United States of America. So there's a lot of interesting history here, but apparently Donald Trump has a bromance with Andrew Jackson. If you listen to that, he planned to lay a wreath. I believe that probably happened this week already. I haven't seen anything in the news, but he said last Friday that he was going to, not last night's last Friday, but a week prior. He said he was going to lay a wreath at his gravesite, which Jackson, although born here in North Carolina and was now known as Gaston County, to some poor farmers, Scot-Irish farmers. There was a Scot-Irish community here, but he left here and he went to Tennessee, probably worked his way up on some slave plantations, joined the militia, eventually, rose up in the ranks of the Tennessee militia, and I mean, this guy is not a guy to be praising, but I can understand why white supremacists or people who identify with that religion, I can understand why they praise somebody like Jackson. But other than the white nationalism, um, and the oppression of non-white people that have suffered because of the United States, and that's including all their states and all that history as they was making land grabs, and certainly Andrew Jackson has a history of stealing millions upon millions of acres of land to then turn around and give to the poor white, what they were known as poor white trash. And I say that because that's how they were looked at by what Jackson called the aristocracy. So Jackson came from humble beginnings right here where I am, born to some recent immigrants from somewhere in Scotland or Ireland, somewhere in the border in between. And they moved here, and he was born into that family. He did fight in I wouldn't say fight. He was a little kid, but a teenager, but he was a courier for the American Revolutionary Army. It said he was captured by the British and they abused him. And so he was, really, really angry with the British most of his life, although later he would give them favored nation status in his administration. So, I mean, it's a lot of history here, but if you look at that presidency, you can kind of see how Donald Trump is using the populism of an Andrew Jackson and how he used that in his campaign, how he's even using it now. What they're calling populism, the way that Trump is using it is the way that Jackson was using it, and just racism, white nationalism, white identifying with white. But at that time, there was a civil war between whites. I guess Jackson figured out, I'm only considered white, in terms of my skin color over here in America, but you English born or those colonists with English ancestry, y'all kind of snobbish, y'all, are mostly wealthy planters and stuff like that. So there was a kind of like a civil war between the people who created white supremacy and those who they recently allowed to have a white card just so they could use them to be their foot soldiers in white supremacy. So it's a lot of complicated, well, it's not really complicated history, but we'll get into some of that history. If you look at the appointments of Donald Trump and his administration, you might ask yourself, well, what did that person do to be qualified to become the HUD secretary or to be in his private circle, in the White House, his White House staff communication, people questioning like the qualifications of some of these, like a Steve Bannon and other people surrounding him. Well, what you're seeing is nepotism is the term I think they call it, but that is where you give, after you win an election, you don't hire people based on their qualifications. You hire them or you appoint them to positions in the federal government, in your administration, based on them being your friends, family members, as well as how much did they do to help you, win. Steve Bannon helped through his publication that he manages, Breitbart. And so that appears to be what Trump is doing. His daughter, even though she's taking a so-called unpaid, unofficial position, has just established an office in the West Wing. And I guess she's going to be his right-hand woman or what. I don't know what they call in the position, but that's his daughter. Well, Andrew Jackson is known of all American politicians to have introduced nepotism into politics here in America. And it's not that Trump is the first. If you look at how the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, was operating on who they wanted to hand the nomination by cheating all the other Democratic nominees, that's nepotism. Oh, I'm down with this person. I'm friends with this person. And if this person get elected, I'm going to get appointed to these certain positions. Andrew Jackson is the one who introduced that, according to my research. Some people might be able to find where it was much earlier, but it was widespread in Andrew Jackson's presidency. So we're seeing that repeat here in Donald Trump administration. But again, I just told you they all do it. And it's interesting that Donald Trump's a Republican president, and Andrew Jackson is one of the founders of the Democratic Party, of what became the modern Democratic Party. So there is a term that was used back then for politics and, political labels and what have you. But I would like to revive that to describe some of these people who practice racism in the Democratic Party. And there were a group of Democrats known as Jacksonian Democrats, and they followed their hero, their idol. Like Donald Trump is saying, this man is his idol. He has a bromance with him, obviously. And they were known as Jacksonian Democrats. And that's a big part of his administration, was the introduction of nepotism, to the American body politic. So that is the main topic. We'll take a look at Donald Trump, take a look at Andrew Jackson, see if we can just learn a little bit more about the system of racism and white supremacy. But before we get into that, I do have some other news and hot topics, do have some news of the week that I'll just go through quickly and share with you. But some other, let's just call these like subtopics. Are you playing the black gender blame game? Now, these are a couple of questions that I wrote down that I'd like somebody to attempt to answer if they can. And again, the telephone number is 866-510-9025. Hit star if you would like to comment on air. That'll unmute you. Or you could just post them in the comments section if you're watching on video. So are you playing the black gender blame game? So I noticed this over the week. I mean, it's always been there, but it's just been really an uptick in this anti-black male bashing and trolling online. It's always been that element, but it just seems like they've just come out of the woodwork, like there's some sort of organized online campaign where people are, I don't know if these are people who are really black feminists or black women. They could be anybody who just using a black woman's photo. In the body politic, they did pay people. Y'all can look it up. They did. You had super PACs that would hire trolls to flood the comment section during the campaigns, during the primaries. This is old hat. And so how do we know that these people who seem to be promoting this anti-black male theme in social media, how do we know who these people really are? But let's just, for the sake of argument, say that these are self-identified black feminists. Some other women may not identify as feminists, but they joined the anti-black male bashing bandwagon. So, we're going to put them in there, but they may not identify as feminists. So I'm asking a couple of questions. Is there an organized effort to sow disharmony among black activists, spearheaded by black feminists operating on liberal money? We even say white liberal money, because we know ain't no black folks giving out tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars. We don't seem to have, any large foundations like that. So we got Colin Kaepernick, giving what he can, which is a lot more than I can, but we ain't got anybody funding our supposed to be anti-racist organizations. No, Black Talk Media Project, we are not getting those big kind of checks. So that's why I'm asking a question. Where all this money coming from? Is there a coordinated effort online, some kind of campaign? Let's bash the black male and blame him for everything. Which then that causes black males to be defensive, and they may not know, that there's this manufactured war going on, but they want to say, hey, I'm not like that. Why are you putting all these black people, all these black men in a box and saying, black men don't seem to care? And there's problems with these words. When you say seem, that means you don't know. It seems that way. I perceive something. Well, just because you perceive something don't make it real. And we all know who is in control of perceptions in this country. How do we perceive things if not on a mass scale through the lens of the mass media? And black males ain't in control of no mass media outlets that I know about. We may have a token or two sitting on the board, but they not in control of nothing. Okay. So Are these real black feminists but paid trolls behind a profile pic? Again, I talked about super PACs paying people to troll people online or to promote a candidate or to just sow stuff like the Bernie Bros. That was completely manufactured. These women getting offended. Oh, this a Bernie bro. Look at what he's doing. Hey, that seems very similar to what I'm seeing in the black online social community right now, not on btrcommunity.com or, which is our platform that we set up for Black Talk Radio Network, but on the other social medias. Seems very awful similar to the attacks on Bernie Sanders supporters trying to portray them as male chauvinist pigs who don't care about women and who do a bunch of mansplaining. I thought I remember them talking points that I was hearing. It's the same tactic. So again, that just makes me even more believe there's some white liberal money behind this. There's some Jacksonian Democrats that's probably got these black people or paying black people to pretend to be black people to sow all this anti-black male discord online. Divide and conquer. So, we hear this word. I was also thinking about that because, the term intersectionality came up. And so what is that term? What is the definition of intersectionality? And is that term confusing for the masses? Again, you got to remember, and this is not to put anybody down, it's more of an indictment of how they are not educating our children in these schools, but indoctrinating them. But I think the average reading level in the United States, and that's everybody, maybe between 8th grade and 12th grade. It might be 8th grade. I haven't looked it up in a while. But it's not a whole lot of complicated people who know the terms and the definitions of these big words that we be using. This is the kind of stuff professors talk about among themselves when they writing papers and submitting papers and stuff, and they trying to get some funding to explore these theories or whatnot. But what is this? What is the definition, and is it too confusing for the masses? Because the masses is what's going to bring about change, not the individuals. But are these terms also making the system of racism and white supremacy more complex than what it is? Why do we want to turn simple math into trigonometry? I don't understand that. And so another question I have is, does applying intersectionality to the system of racism and white supremacy divide victims? Because if you divide the victims and you get them focusing on their differences, then guess who you're not focusing on? And, there is a point where let's use the word intersection. That's where it's a road, usually 4 roads that lead to this one intersection, ground zero. So that's how they're applying intersectionality. Is gender discrimination, discrimination against gays, discrimination against just black people, period. That discriminate, and then they all intercede. They're intersectional, but I mean, don't they all intercede to ground zero? And who's sitting at ground zero? Who's the root of all of these problems? So it kind of like, why should I be focusing on my difference with other victims? Should I be focusing and directing all my efforts towards the system of white supremacy, those that's in charge, those that's practicing legalized slavery against many of these different demographics and what have you? So I'm just a person who gives thought to things, and I like to put them out there and ask other people what do they think. Also, missing black girls. What's the real story? We've been seeing this in social media. And because I run a nonprofit organization, a media organization, and we do engage in journalism, it's very important to us that we be credible, and we try to promote credibility, to check your sources. Just do it doesn't matter if you went to school for journalism. There are basic rules to determining whether a story is true or false. And that's trying to find 2 or other 3 sources, and hopefully those people went straight to the source or they're quoting somebody that they feel is credible and provided ample evidence that a story is true. So you want to find 2 or 3 sources. So I kind of knew something was up when a person I know that works in the mainstream, works on TV One, I'm not going to call their name out. They know who they are. And so they're pushing this story saying, why is the mainstream media ignoring all of these black girls that's gone missing over the weekend in Washington, D.C.? And so I say, source, please. And another person asked for a source. So I saw about at least 2 people, myself included, ask for a link for a source to this story, and they did not provide one. Again, I see this person on television. Well, I don't watch television, but I see this person on YouTube clips and stuff like that when they're on part of the panel of Roland Martin on News One. And I'm like, now you ought to know better where your sources are. Where are your sources to this? Okay, don't provide none. I'll track the story down myself. So I started doing some research, and there was really not an uptick, but it's still a sad story when you figure just how many people go missing in this country, period. But they were framing it in terms of black women, like black women, which black women are being neglected in the media. And so, you know, we've always said that for years and years, and it's true. They don't cover all the cases, and they don't cover, a high percentage of the cases. They may or may not make the news. It doesn't blow up on CNN or MSNBC. And so in this case, it could be that they didn't run the story is because they were hyping the story. Yes, it's black girls going missing and Latino girls going missing in Washington, D.C., but it wasn't an uptick. And so RT Today actually produced a report that was pretty good, and they talked to a police commander, a black woman, and they actually got a pretty good rate of recovering these teenagers, which the vast majority of them run away and then come back home. I think last year in 2016, or it might have been 2014 when they had complete stats. And I think it said like 700 of them were reported missing, and 600 of them were either found or came back home. And so they're saying that somebody probably started following them because the police department in Washington, D.C., that is following them on Twitter as they started to utilize Twitter more in trying to help to find those girls or locate those girls or anybody that's missing when they go missing. And so they were saying that they probably saw all the ones we were tweeting and thought it was out of the ordinary, when it's actually not out of the ordinary, that kids do, in fact, children, teenagers do, in fact, run away from home every day. And so that could be for many different reasons. So, but still though, our people, it's like, we got enough stress on us as it is to then have people, because you see a lot of emotional reactions from it, and people be all in their feelings and stuff, and it turned out to not be true, or they didn't share all the details with you, and they just trying to whip you up on social media for likes and shares, So, I mean, people talk about that whole phenomenon of doing stuff for likes and shares. So, the real story is that that produced a meme where it then said there were some women in Georgia, Savannah, Georgia, found in a container, a shipping container, like you see loaded on ships, and then they put them on the back of a truck, and they use these to ship goods to stores and things of that nature, and saying it was a trailer full of them. A shipping container full of black women found in Savannah, Georgia. I mean, it was shared hundreds of times, if not thousands of times when I saw it. So I'm like, wow, is that really going on? And I haven't seen the mainstream media. Are they ignoring this story, or is this true? Now, mind you, this is just a Facebook meme. So I do a search, and I try to source the story, is what it's called in the industry. I try to source the story. It turned out to be a fake story. I mean, you get all these thousands of people, when they say things go viral, and they be all in their feelings and posting all about it, and you wasting their time when they could be focusing on some real people that's missing. some real, human trafficking that's going on, and talking about that and posting about that, these sensationalized stories that people I don't understand, because Facebook ain't cutting nobody in on their revenue in terms of content producers that I know of. So what, do you get an emotional high off of just putting out fake stuff and all these people like it and share it and what have you? Man, that's a sickness, and you need to get some help. But we have to quit falling victim to fake news, because a lot of fake news does get put out there, and then we share it, and then people be questioning my credibility. I'm gonna have to sort what you should. I'm gonna have to source everything I hear on BTR News, because he's saying some stuff I ain't heard nowhere else. Well, that you're supposed to source it, but definitely I have a track record. So those are a couple of stories. Now, while I was trying to source that story, I did find a story of young women. I don't know what their racial classification was, but they had met this guy through online dating, or I don't know if it was social media or one of those sites you pay to for online dating. But that's how the young women met this guy, traveled to his house. And I think it was like 10 of them that you could basically say he kidnapped them. He wouldn't let them leave at all. He held them hostage in the house. And I think it has something to do with some pornography or prostitution, but we'll get into that story a little bit later. But again, during the second hour, I want to talk about the facts about Andrew Jackson and the poor white trash that loved him and why they loved him. It was a reason they loved him. And he's known as a quote unquote, this is cold populist candidate, appealing to the masses. The masses are what? The masses are who? The masses are white people, suspected racists. That's who Andrew Jackson was. That's what he was doing. He was running a Southern campaign. All right. Nixon don't get that credit. Let's give it to Andrew Jackson when we look at him. So, lots of information published online about him. But first, let me get into some of the news stories of the day. Again, the telephone number, if you would like to chime in or ask a question or present some other information that you think shows that I might need to take a look at, you can give us a call at 866-510-9025, hit ** to unmute yourself. You can also hit us up, 704-802-5056. Let's see if we have any questions thus far. We got Carlton Reed, little bro. Shout out to you, little bro. Cousin John coming up there next week. So check him out. He says racism needs to be killed at the root. You have to. And I feel like racism, the root of racism is slavery, because it was through slavery that they introduced racial classifications. And so that's the root. First, it was slavery. Then at the Bacon's Rebellion, it was like, oh, we can't keep mistreating the Irish and the Scot-Irish if we want to maintain the system of slavery. So let's cut a deal with them, get them a white privilege card and start calling them white people. And let's just make this slavery African only, or Afro descendant only, melanated people only, whether they Indians or indigenous, mulattoes, whatever you want to call them, but as long as they not white. So that the root, if we want to snatch the root of racism up, then the root, racism is a branch off of slavery. That's what the evidence seems to suggest. And I'm talking about on this continent here, and since we're talking about American history. All right, so let me go over some of the news stories of the day. Racism lessons from the African church. That comes to you from cruxnow.com. What can the African church teach the world about racism and ethnocentrism? Few places have struggled with foreign racial bias as well as endemic ethnic divides as much as the African continent. But church leaders from African countries are calling for unity, resilience, and of course, a sense of humor. A lot of people think it's one big happy family in Africa, but it's not. They have different tribes. They have different ethnicities. They have different languages. And sometimes there is some friction between the different groups if they start competing for the same resources and what have you. But yeah, I don't know what they mean by that foreign racial bias. Got to be talking about people coming from Europe, coming from the Americas, Australia, wherever we find these land masses with high populations of quote unquote white people. Here's a story that's a trip that comes to you from Wall Street Pit. It says robots made with human flesh are coming. University of Oxford biomedical researchers Pierre Alex Moutet and Andrew Carr have made a proposal that sounds sensible, but also kind of scary at the same time. They want to use human tissue on robots. Just ponder on that for a while. That's from wallstreetpit.com. L.A. Ramon, this is from the BTR community at btrcommunity.com, a subscriber-based social media platform set up for the listeners of Black Talk Radio Network. L.A. Ramon says, where will the flesh come from? Will there be a rise in identity theft? Will it be a hate crime if robots are attacked for their artificial existence? I could go on. Ross says, Terminators are finally here. I said they grow organs in labs these days. Maybe they're talking about using them to grow and harvest organs. And so skin, also they can harvest skin. They'll probably say, use it for burn victims and things of that nature. So, I mean, you think about science fiction, as we was having a conversation on Tando Radio about art imitating life or life imitating art, which came first, the chicken or the egg? I mean, it just goes around and around in a circle. So a lot of these things were conceived in science fiction. And I'm talking about medical things, science. Yeah, they call it science fiction, dealing with science. So you see these sort of things in the movies, and then next thing you know, they got it in a real lab. And next thing you know, they ready to make sex robots with human flesh. All right, next story. This is a story on political prisoners. This was posted in Political Prisoners and Prisoners of War. This is a update from political prisoner, Black Panther Party member Jaleel Montekeem. He says that he's out of there. They stopped torturing him in terms of having him in the SHU. Let me just read this for you. I'm out of the SHU. However, phones, commissary, and packages won't be restored until March the 29th, 2017. So he still got 4 days. They released me from the SHU and placed me in the closed supervision unit, the CSU, absent any notice or due process procedure. At the surface, prisoners are treated like all other prisoners, go to school, programs, recreation, etc., as all other prisoners. But they are scrutinized more closely, searched more often, and I imagine reported on more frequently. I intend to file a FOIL request for all documents regarding the unit and the arbitrary and capricious decision to place me in the CSU. Once I get the documents, I'll file a grievance and exhaust administrative remedies and proceed with a petition in court. He is in New York City. I am trying to set up a interview with a freedom fighter from New York City to talk about the state of New York is now going to eliminate visitation. Now, I got to get more details. It's been a couple of days since I read the information, but I received some more information last night. But they're about to severely restrict the visitation policies, which means that families won't be able to visit, their family members who are victims of modern day slavery and human trafficking on a prison plantation or up in a jail somewhere, especially somebody like a political prisoner like Jaleel is. So that is something that they are really moving on and asking people to lend assistance. So definitely want to keep our eye on that story. All right, this is a story, though, that some people, and we always see this whenever we have these terrorists who are classified as white, and they usually are openly practicing the religion of white supremacy, like Dylan Roof, like his friend that wanted that knew about the attack and was sentenced here recently, about the guy who planned a Dylan Rue style attack, but was busted before he could commit such an attack. You know, they don't call these people terrorists, but you have one guy in London who attacks a police officer, runs over a bunch of people, and I'm not trying to minimize, especially those who got killed or injured out there, but they immediately call this a terrorist attack. Why? Because the man got black skin, because he's melanated, because he's also a Muslim. Why? Why would you call, in the media, immediately calling it terrorism? So, but when this racist person who practices white supremacy traveled to New York from Baltimore to go kill some black men, specifically stabbed an elderly black man in his 60s through the back with, we might as well call it a saber, you know, a little sword. I forget how long the blade was, but this coward even stabbed the old man from the back. And so he is expressing a political view, a social view. He said he want to send a message to black people. And so I don't want to see him charged with no hate crime. Charge him with terrorism. This is terrorism. Find out if anybody else knew, if he belonged to any kind of these white supremacist, white terrorist cells here in the United States. But even the media is in practicing racism and white supremacy when they don't need the U.S. government to call it terrorism. An editor can slap their headline on these stories anytime they want to, but they don't. They call it a hate crime attack. They just call it simply an attack. You don't see no headlines calling these men terrorists. You don't. You don't. And the organizations that influence them have tax deductible status in many states. They even get money through financial institutions, through banks, and nobody is concerned about that. But yet right now, you're trying to track down everybody that this guy, this black Muslim in London may have known, may have said hello to walking down the street. You trying to find all of that. And you talking about targeting these people you say belong to cells that y'all had y'all eye on, so we gonna bring them in. And how come that ain't happening here in America? Well, we know why, because it's a racist country that practices terrorism. So they practice terrorism here, they practice terrorism abroad. So I don't want to get sidetracked. So that's a question. When does these so-called crimes become an act of terrorism? Well, I named the criteria, it appears, for not only these Western governments, but for Western media. The subject got to be non-white, and especially if he practiced a non-Christian religion or philosophy or what have you. So that seemed to be the criteria. So Al Jazeera English interviewed a couple of people. So check that story out. Just Google it was on Inside Story. When does a crime become an act of terrorism? Now, they wasn't really talking about this white guy here in New York. They didn't bring him up at all. But they were asking a question in the European context is, why is the media going along and how is this not just a crime? Why is it an act of terrorism? What, because he's Muslim? Because he's black? What's going on here? But yet these white blokes who can come to London, as I saw somebody, one of my activist friends on social media that lives in London, said these white men can travel from the country and come up here and get drunk and start targeting people, black people, being racist, targeting women, and what have you, but nobody calls those acts of terrorism. So again, the whole system, both corporate and state, is built on or operating on the laws of white supremacy. All right, what's another story that I wanted to share with you today? Why doesn't mainstream media report on missing DC girls? We'll talk about that one later. 19-year-old U.S. Israeli citizen arrested for wave of bomb threats against Jewish centers. Has this been really dominating news headlines? I've been seeing it in Google News and a lot of headlines. I don't really watch CNN, MSNBC. I'll catch clips on YouTube, or if it go viral, somebody sharing it or what have you. But here you got this U.S. Israeli citizen arrested for a wave of bomb threats. A 19-year-old U.S. Israeli citizen has been arrested in southern Israel on suspicion of carrying out a wave of telephone bomb threats targeting Jewish centers and communities around the world. Now, what we heard before that was this black guy. Where was he at? I can't remember where he was, but he was here in the United States, and he was breaking up with his white girlfriend, and he was trying to get her in trouble, I guess, and he was trying to frame her for making these calls. And so, but this guy right here, he has some kind of elaborate setup, which has some people questioning, did he have help? Was he really working for, like, say, the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces? Was he working for Mossad? Or because he seemed to have a complicated setup to make all these different phone calls and mask the phone numbers. He wasn't just calling up, looking up numbers online and then calling these people from his cell phone or from his online number. No, he has set up an elaborate system. So that makes me think he might have had state help. But it goes on, it says the months-long multi-agency investigation led Israel's police international crime investigations unit to the city of Ashkelon, where the suspect and his father were arrested, and a search of their home was conducted on Thursday, according to local media reports. That's a report from RT.com. But I'm sure he wasn't the one going out there knocking over those headstones and stuff. They still ain't made no arrest that I have seen in that. But all the bomb threats, yeah, this guy. NFL, this is the last story, and we'll get into the main topics. NFL players blast the league for not signing Colin Kaepernick. So I want to pull up a couple of these tweets that went out. As y'all know, Colin Kaepernick, NFL quarterback, was with the San Francisco 49ers. He felt compelled to take a knee or take a seat at first and not stand for the Slavers anthem, what a lot of y'all call the national anthem. But again, it seems a lot of people don't see anything wrong with honoring and repeating the words of people who practice slavery, who are racist, who committed human rights violations against the indigenous, stole their land. And, it's no big deal. And then you wonder why the system keeps perpetuating itself. That's part of the programming. That's why Donald Trump can praise Andrew Jackson and nobody blink an eye. You didn't see anybody on CNN or MSNBC going off the rails talking about how dare he uphold this racist slavery, and this is just outrageous. When is America going to stop holding up maniacs and murderers and rapists as his heroes to future generations? No, they try to dismiss, that was just how it was back then. Well, it's the same like now, so what's the difference? Anyway, people are saying that, and even Donald Trump tried to say on Twitter that, hey, the reason ain't nobody hired or gave Colin Kaepernick, this former two-time Super Bowl, he did lose, but, it takes a lot to get to that game. And NFC champion, two-time NFC championship quarterback ain't got a job, not even as a backup. I mean, his skills ain't dwindled that much. You can debate how good he is and whether or not he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. You can argue that, but you can't argue that a backup, come on, man, he should be on the top of the list when it comes to if I'm looking to hire a backup quarterback. So Donald Trump said he ain't got no job because they scared of him, all of these owners who are more than likely practicing racism and racist suspects themselves. They ain't got a problem with the slavers anthem and all that kind of militarism and stuff like that going on. So anyway, he said that, they scared of me because if they get this young man a job, I'm going to go after them or whatnot. Now, I haven't really thought about it. It seems like The president of the Donald Trump could be sued, or the office of the presidency, the United States government, could be sued by Colin Kaepernick. Really, I mean, I had to give some more thought to that. I don't want to go down that road. But even other players are noting that the only reason y'all ain't gave this man a job is because he's there, did something to raise our consciousness about racism and white supremacy, about all these unarmed Americans being shot down in the street by police officers and not in an adequate investigation. And even when there is evidence, they just find them not guilty because of people practicing racism, white supremacy in the jury pool. So anyway, you've had, now I don't know if these are current or former NFL players, but you have Malcolm Jenkins and Torrey Smith tweet about it. Malcolm Jenkins said, at NFL general managers, you can try to act like talent is the reason at Kaepernick 7 isn't employed, but we know the real reason. Then Colin, and he clicks on a video, or he provides a link to a video on NFL Total Access. Torrey Smith said Colin Kaepernick is not currently employed. However, his skill set vastly exceeds others who were on the market. Torrey Smith said at least 64 quarterbacks are in the NFL. Cap doesn't have a job, but some folks who he is better than do. So, it's no big secret. They're not trying to hide it, that they are harming this young man, preventing his ability to work based off of his social political views. It is no different than back in the days of McCarthyism when they ran, what was his name, Paul Robeson, out of the United States, wouldn't give him a job or whatnot because he had communist views or he identified with principles of communism. But again, this ain't no free country. I mean, we're seeing the same thing play out now. So, you know, this is how they do. This is how they do. They try to make you pay for standing up, for promoting truth, for standing up for justice, for pointing things out, or we gonna make you pay. So my question is to the NFL fans out there, what y'all gonna do about it? Y'all gonna keep watching games? Y'all gonna go to these NFL games? Y'all gonna be spending this money, or Cap don't have a job? What y'all gonna do? Y'all gonna have his back? All right, so now let's get into some of the these main topics. All I'm gonna say this about, are you playing the gender blame game? This is all I have to say about that. I'm no longer participating. I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm not going to defend black men. I'm not going to post videos. I'm not going to post videos or anything like that showing you black men at all of these different protests and demonstration working right alongside of black women. I'm not going to show you those black men that was about to beat that Asian man up in Chicago outside of Misha's beauty supply store. I know some people were trying to say, oh, what happened in Charlotte? Well, why didn't, where was the black men at? Well, you won't find a whole lot of black men shopping inside of beauty supply stores. But I didn't see the black women who were in there. They did record it, and we glad they recorded. They were standing around taking video. They didn't jump in it. I didn't see no black transgender men who may have been in there shopping at the beauty supply store come to that woman's rescue as that Asian dude and woman was beating on her and putting her in the chokehold. I didn't see none of that. But what I did see in Chicago at Misa standing outside, I saw a whole bunch of brothers about to jump on that dude, and that was stupid. You don't want to go to jail. You don't want to become a slave on a prison plantation because you got in your emotions. Just cost him his business. Just shut it down that way. Boycott it like that. But all those black men, and then the sister standing there talking about the list of demands with a black man holding the microphone for her. You know what I'm saying? So come on. How can you come out your mouth and say, it seems like black men are not supporting black women. What are you watching? That's what would be my question, because seem, that's a word that says you're not sure. You're not sure that black men are not supporting black women. It just seems that way. Well, come on, if you're going to participate in a gender war in the black community causing division, you ought to be about sure about what you're talking about. All right. And you need to recognize who controls your perception of the black male, of the black woman, of the black child. Who controls those perceptions? Do we control those perceptions? No, we do not. We do not control mass media. We're trying to harness new media, but we ain't in control of mass media. So who's in control of the things that you're seeing, and why you have these perceptions and these anti-black feelings about black male? Well, it's because of the anti-black programming you getting from the stuff y'all are watching. And again, I don't put it past some people to be faking the funk and not be black people and be white liberals who want to divide the black community, especially Hillary Clinton supporters. We know that she had a super PAC that hired online trolls to go start stuff online with people and then feign like, oh, they're a bunch of sexist, the different names they have from them, male chauvinists and all this and that. And no, it's woman power and all, coming up in with all that garbage. And it was all manufactured. I see this as possibly being the reason why I'm seeing more of these postings on Facebook and these long threads. Well, what about this and what about that? People talking about, well, most black women is molested or raped or robbed or domestic violence victims is the black man is the one doing it. Well, guess what? The white woman can say the same thing about who the people look like that's victimizing her the most. So can the Hispanic woman. That's not a revelation. The FBI crime statistics show you that. They show you that. Matter of fact, we would bring that up when people try to say that black people are more violent and more criminal than other groups. Look at them. Let's look at look at that black man raping that black woman or robbing that robbing that white woman. I'm sorry. Where this is very, very rare, they'll find one case where that might happen, where it be some interracial crime going on, and the mainstream media blow that up like that's the norm, and be afraid of black men and clutch your purses, and if they get on the elevator, get off, take the stairs or what have you. It's all manufactured. I see the same thing playing out with these people pretending to be black women or black women who have become pulled into this and are the dupes of these people. I see that's what's going on, man. That could be a big part of it. Somebody getting paid to cause this division. And then, to even say that most of the people that's harming black women is black men. Well, technically, that's not true. Now, those things like domestic violence, rape, stuff like that, FBI crime statistics. Most people are victimized by people who look like them or are in the same racial classification. So that's not no kind of proof to pull out to show how terrible black men are. The majority of black men aren't criminals and rapists and doing all this stuff to harm the community. So let's not even try to pull that out the hat, put that away, because it makes no sense. But the number one victimizer of black women are white people running the racist white supremacist system. When we see that since 1985, all women, but black women in particularly, are the largest demographic of people becoming new slaves, either on a prison plantation or in a jail, or getting put on probation. Y'all lead the way. I know y'all like to pull out that stat about we the leading group and creating businesses or getting college degrees and those are positive things. Those need to be promoted, but you're also the leading group and getting locked up these days becoming victimized, and black people ain't controlling that. Black males ain't controlling that. Do you got some black males participating in it? Yes, just as well as you got some black females participating in modern day slavery and human trafficking on many different levels, including sitting on the boards of these private prison corporations. They push these kind of laws. They have all of these black women being the number one commodity in modern day slavery since 1985. So don't put that on the black male, okay? We ain't the ones victimizing you the most. Does that mean we are to ignore any of these social ills that happen in all communities? No, we should not. We need to have, meetings, community meetings, and come together and let's talk about these issues so we can prevent them happening. But, when I see people just going online and saying and just promoting this anti-black male campaign, I'm questioning whether or not you're black first. Could be paid by white liberal money from people who support Hillary Clinton because, they really mad at us because we didn't want to forgive her for calling us predators and helping to expand private prisons in this country. We weren't forgiving her. So, and like Dave Chappelle said the other night in his thing, you think white women are your number one ally or something? Like Dave Chappelle said, they in on the heist, baby. They in on the heist. So what are you trying to do in bringing all this division and generalizing, practicing white supremacy? Actually, you're practicing proxy racism as a proxy tool of the racist system. But I'm just not going to participate anymore. I don't have to defend black men. There's plenty of evidence out there. We got messed up people in our community. There's messed up people in all communities. That's not a reflection on the entire group. And there is a concerted political effort to remove the black male out of the struggle, period. Oh, we just want you to stand in the back. It's time for transsexuals and women to lead this movement. Come on. Which then leads us into this intersectionality stuff. What's the definition of that? These big words and terms that's confusing the masses and making the system of racism and white supremacy seem more difficult than it really is, or more complex than it really is. It's simple math, 1 + 1 = 2. It's not trigonometry, okay? It's not physics or anything as difficult as that. But there are people getting paid to come up with all these new ways to look at this very old system that's been around hundreds of years to try to explain it. So I decided to look up the definition. I went to the Supreme Dictionary on the planet, White People's Dictionary, and this is what intersectionality. There's two definitions. It's a noun. It says the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, and gender as they apply to a given individual or group, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. Number 2, through an awareness of intersectionality, we can better acknowledge and ground the differences among us. They're quoting somebody. I don't know who they're quoting. So that's not a definition, but that's a quote. Through an awareness of intersectionality, we can better acknowledge and ground the differences among us. Are they talking about eliminating the differences among us? If that's the goal, that's cool, but I don't need that. I don't see that if I'm in the black community. I'm in the black struggle. I can see a need for that in the abolitionist struggle, where you got to show Hispanics, you got to show white people, poor white people, how they're victimized by the modern day system of slavery and human trafficking, by the slave catching. Of course, again, you have some demographics that are more targeted than others, but there is some intersectionality when we talk about how much money they making. These poor people in this particular rural area don't have any more cotton mill jobs, and Trump about to cut off they food stamps and they Section 8 housing. So it's going to get tough out here. And so then they're going to get arrested and end up on the prison plantation one way or the other. If they lucky, they'll probably get put in a diversionary program. They'll be on probation for like 5 years. But I'm telling you, I do see a lot of where that can apply to the new abolitionist movement. But we're talking about the black struggle. If we're talking about black people, then why do we need to deviate beyond our classification of black? Okay? And while we focusing on our differences, I'm mistreated by the system in this way. Well, I'm mistreated in the system that way. Well, guess what? Everybody's being mistreated and it's coming from the same place. That's the system. So let's tear down this system first. Let's come up with a plan to solve this problem called racism, white supremacy. Then we can deal with that other stuff later. But it seems to me we need to get our biggest antagonists on the planet first before we start breaking ourselves off because that is what I'm seeing. It's happening. And it's being pushed by a certain organization out there. When you say your goal is to push me, a heterosexual black father, black male, black brother, black uncle, black grandfather, to the back of the movement, you know what I'm saying? And replace me with someone else, regardless of what my leadership skills may be, regardless of what I'm bringing to the table. We tired of y'all. We taking this over, and then you want to say black men don't support you. Man, so I'm staying out of that. I'm no longer going to talk about it. I'm not going to fall for the program, and I'm not going to fall for what they want. And that's me arguing with my sisters and coming up with these ridiculous, look, there is crime. There are issues we need to address in the black community, but the black male ain't the sole source of that. It's a lot of things that go into making a damaged person that will harm another person and keep perpetuating the cycle of harm that's going on. But but we talk about how all of these mothers raising these sons, now you want to blame them for how you raised them? Come on, man. I don't want to go there. I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on ending slavery, destroying slavery in this country so it can't operate legally and people can't invest in it on Wall Street. Then I'll focus on, racism, because I feel like slavery. No, I don't feel like. I know that racism is a symptom of slavery. Then we'll look at dismantling that. There's a pecking order. There's a logical order to this stuff. But I'm not going to get bogged down in playing the gender blame game with black women. I'm just simply not going to do it. Let's see. Missing black girls. What's the real story? Let's not fall victim to that, I'm going to pull up this YouTube video.
Over the past couple of weeks,
pull up this YouTube video, and we probably go past 2 hours if I need to. Well, actually, I've linked to them in the description. I don't have time to keep belaboring these points, but shame on the people on social media that love to get black people in an emotional state so that they'll share these sensationalized stories and be all worried and be angry, and their blood pressure go up, and they be talking mad junk on the internet and saying why this, why that, while ignoring real stories because all their attention been taken away by a fake story or a sensationalized story. Again, if you're a journalist, I'm looking at you on TV and you feeding into this hype. I'm glad you walked away from Black Talk Radio, because I know your real reason was to come to spy on us. This person knows who I'm talking about, okay? They know who I'm talking about, but I'll be peeping their game. And I saw you hyping this stuff, and then we asked you for a link. You couldn't provide not one link. Getting all these people upset. So why doesn't mainstream media report on missing DC girls? Let me just jump ahead to this black woman who works for the DC police, Metro Police, and hear what she had to say about why it may seem like it was an uptick. But again, any coverage we can get on our missing is good coverage. But let's not make up fake stories.
Life presser with Commander Dickerson. Here's what Commander Dickerson said.
We have received a lot of media attention and a lot of concerns from the public because of the number of releases. There have been concerns that young girls in the District of Columbia are victims of human trafficking or have been kidnapped. And there's an increase in the number. And I say this without minimizing the number of missing persons in DC, because one missing person is one person too many, but there's actually been a decrease. And sadly, a large number of our missing girls return, maybe not voluntarily, and return within a short period of time.
Many people have taken to Twitter using the hashtag #MissingDCGirls to voice their concern. So a bunch of little girls have gone missing and we're finding out on social media instead of news networks. All these young black girls missing in DC, something is not right and the MPD needs to be investigated. Welcome to America, where we use the FBI to find a Jersey, but can't even get an Amber Alerts for the missing DC girls. This person was referring to Tom Brady's stolen jersey that was returned to his team by the FBI. Lawmakers are now calling on the FBI to use their time wisely and look for the missing Black and Latino girls. They are asking Attorney General Jeff Sessions and FBI Director James Comey to devote the resources necessary to determine whether these developments are an anomaly or whether they are indicative of an underlying trend that must be addressed.
All right, we're going to stop it there. You can go to RT's YouTube channel if you want to find that and comment on that. But again, it wasn't an uptick, but there are far too many people going missing in this country. It could have to do with the illegal human trafficking and sexual slavery. As one story I did find in trying to track down these rumors. But in the DC case, it just said that they just started posting the missing reports online. And again, a lot of these are runaways that then come back home a week later, a month later, or they are found. Somebody locates them. But like last year in 2014, they were saying that it was like, let me see if I can see the stat right quick. Let me see, DC missing person cases, 2017 missing person cases have been declining. 708 missing person cases thus far, 674 resolved. Okay, so that's not an uptick. That's not something that you should be getting black people all emotional and saying, why the media ain't reporting this? And it's been all these black girls going missing. And it's not, you're not being truthful in how you're portraying this. But again, we do a lot for likes and clicks. I don't know why. Probably some psychological or something, I don't know. But it's a sad when you're a featured journalist on television and you putting out that kind of stuff without providing links. The story I talked about, the meme. Let me pull this story up. Somebody shared it on Facebook. Another person asked me, was it real? It said a Facebook post that has been copied and shared dozens of times actually ended up being hundreds of times, if not thousands of times, concerning the claim about women being potentially human trafficked in Savannah is currently being held as a rumor. The post that surfaced on Monday made reference to the trailer full of young black women that was about to be shipped yesterday from the Savannah ports. Now, this was playing off of the DC girl missing story going viral. And so some sick-minded person said, let me get some likes and shares and come up with this meme and make up this story about black women being found in a shipping container in Savannah. You know, I mean, that's just really sick because this hurts people. People, especially, no, I'm not going to say women, put it all on women, but men get emotional too. They get angry. Women be like, man, this is frustrating, and it all be fake. That's just pitiful. Let me see. Harrison, let me see who was talking here. WSAV spoke to the Department of Homeland Security and the president of Savannah working against human trafficking, Deidre Harrison, who clarified the post to be unsubstantiated. So this is a grassroots sister in that area who works against that sort of stuff. She said, what we can concurrently say is that none of the claims have been substantiated by any government agency or any credible industry on this matter. She also stressed that social media can be a double-edged sword when it comes to human trafficking in the modern age. She says that while it can be positive for educating the public about the presence and risk of trafficking, to also know that it can spread unsubstantiated information to a mass audience. Again, people just putting this stuff out there for entertainment because they sitting back laughing at you, getting emotional, arguing with other people about these stories. That's just sick, man. As if we ain't got real people in these situations. Now, the only good thing to come out of this, if you want to say something good, is that I did find a story in Georgia about human trafficking. And I'm going to roll that clip for you. It may play an ad, but we'll get through it. Out of Sandy Springs, Georgia, WXIA.
With
Georgia police say a 911 call led to the rescue of 8 human trafficking victims being held against their will in a $1 million home. So what it appears that some dude was posting on Facebook or on his social media. Let me stop it before we play it. In this $1 million home, I'm balling. I'm a big baller. You know, y'all know I'm about that life and all the imagery we see coming out of gangster rap and pop rap even and glorifying material things. And so he used this $1 million home. He could have been renting it, leasing it. I don't know how he got access to it. But he was getting these girls to come down, and let me just let y'all listen to the story. All right, here we go.
8-year-old woman calling 911 to say she was in a house full of girls and feared for her life.
I'm in a very bad situation and I need to get out. I was planning on leaving today.
Wait, did you say you're in a house full of girls?
Mm-hmm.
And somebody threatened to kill you if you leave?
Mm-hmm.
Who's threatening to kill you? One of the girls?
No, our boss.
The 20-year-old female explained the 8 girls in the house were dancers working for this man, Kendrick Roberts. Police raided the house with the help of the FBI. Roberts was arrested and charged with false imprisonment and trafficking of persons for labor.
We believe that he's been making promises to some of these ladies for modeling careers, financial assistance.
All right, that is that story. So, I mean, we have to be careful. We have to educate our young women about, you know, they see these online ads and they want to be a model, and a lot of it turned into porn offers and what have you. But in this case right here, man, this guy was holding them in the house against their will, threatening to kill them. I don't know if he was getting ready to start prostituting them. I don't know if he was taking porn videos of them and posting it online. We're not hearing any of that. So it appears this is just the initial investigative stage based off of this, one of the girls getting hold of a phone and calling 911. So again, all this crime, this $1 million home wasn't up in the hood now, was it? So you never know what's going on right around you or in certain areas. So that's a very sad story, and it was a real story, and thankfully the victims got help. All right, so I'm going to take a station identification break. Let me see. Take a station identification break, and then going to jump into the main topic of Donald Trump praising Andrew Jackson. I think I got a video of it. I'm going to have to try to find that for you. Or I could just pull up the audio, but you're listening to Black Talk Radio News. My name is Scotty Reed. I broadcast this radio program live every Saturday at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, but I'm always producing videos and podcasts on the fly. So subscribe to Black Talk Radio News on blacktalkradionetwork.com or any of our YouTube accounts, Be Live. We're also on Be Live, Facebook. That is how you can catch more content under BTR News. So I'm going to take a station identification break, just a quick break, and then we'll be back and get into the main topic. Black Talk Radio Network is made possible in part with help from the Black Talk Media Project, a North Carolina-based nonprofit engaged in the production and distribution of independent digital black media. Find out more by going to blacktalkradionetwork.com or blacktalkmediaproject.org and look for the menu tab, Crowdfunding Black Media. Black Talk Media Project, helping to provide you with new black media for the new millennium. You are tuned in to Black Talk Radio, new black media for the new millennium. All right, so Donald Trump last week, not this past Friday, but the Friday before, the president puts out a weekly radio address. So Donald Trump, in that weekly address, praised Andrew Jackson, said that he was going to go lay a wreath at his grave and what have you. So I was like, man, he's not the only one to do it. This is why I tell black folks that I'll be seeing on Alex Jones' show. I don't see them on his show like that no more. I was like, how can you work or collaborate with Alex Jones? And Alex Jones praises people openly, like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. These were all racist slavers, people who did tremendous harm to our people, our ancestors when they were alive. And so don't you find it, how can you get down with somebody like that who seems to think there's nothing wrong? And if they didn't think anything was wrong with some of these racist slavers in the past, what they were doing in the human rights crimes and violations and what have you, then these people don't care either. They will commit those same acts against you. And in fact, they are. They are. And so I don't, popular culture, it's all white people that's in control of it, rich, wealthy white people. And they don't seem to find anything wrong with praising people like this. So he praised them, called him a great president. Some facts about Jackson. He was born not that far from where I am now. One of my ancestors was a Scot-Irish immigrant who, I don't know how they got a hold of all that land. They got some land granted to them by the Governor Tryon. Then he purchased another 3,000 acres. And so he was like one of these Donald Trumps of his day. You know what I'm saying? But he wasn't practicing slavery or nothing, but he was a real estate mogul. And so other immigrants started coming here to this area, and Andrew Jackson's family did as well. They're Scot-Irish. He belonged to a recently immigrated farming family, and he was born right in this area. They try to say he was born in South Carolina on his uncle's plantation, but no, he was born on his parents' farm here in North Carolina. I don't know if they was like sharecropping or what, but they weren't rich. They didn't have any money. So that gives you a clue of why poor white people or white nationalists kind of identify with Jackson and what have you, because Jackson was like the poor white masses who came over here from Europe without, even though he was born here, but his parents came here without a pot to piss in, as they say, and they didn't really have nothing. They were left at the mercy of the wealthy, the royal, colonists that had some connections back on the continent, that had some resources before they came over here. So he kind of grew up feeling like they were snobs, and probably many of them were snobs and what have you. But it was that whole class warfare. Jackson and them understood that they was only white in regards that they can terrorize black people, enslave black people, just mistreat black people, and it is upheld by the law. But in terms of who's really running things, who's making all the money, who's in control of these things, those were mostly descendants of Europeans from England. So, we kind of see that today. And so it's like they say, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So it kind of stays the same in that regards. So that's one of the things I had learned about Jackson early on. He is the founder, one of the four fathers of the Democratic Party. For you Republicans out there, so why are Republicans praising the Democrat? Well, because when it comes to white supremacy, they all on the same team. All right. That stuff is just for non-white people to divide us up and get us confused. But Jackson was also known for nepotism. That means that, okay, if I get in as president or I get in as governor or whatnot, and you help me run my campaign and you give some of your resources to me, if I win, I'm going to hook you up with a job. I might make you the ambassador to Israel or something like that, where you want to be an ambassador to, okay? Or I might make you, okay, look, dude, if you get your people, if you back out of this nomination process and you get your people to support me for the nomination, if I become president, I'll make you the HUD secretary, even though you ain't qualified to be the HUD secretary. We gonna make you the secretary based off of you helping me and doing this thing for me. Okay, I believe that's what happened between Donald Trump and Ben Carson. Ben Carson kind of spilled the beans on that. That's known as nepotism. And Andrew Jackson, I don't know how true it is, but some of the stuff I've been researching, he's credited with introducing that to Washington, D.C. politics. And so now it's pretty much the norm all over the country. Certainly how the Clintons have operated, certainly how Obama operated. Now, in terms of George W. Bush, those mostly his daddy friends, you know what I'm saying? Because they didn't think too highly of old George. He is known as the old dopehead, cokehead, alcoholic and whatnot. But his daddy, he still got that ancestral ties to his slaver ancestor. I forget the guy's name. But nepotism, giving my friends appointments, even though they ain't qualified, appointing my family to certain positions and what have you. Look, he just appointed his daughter to a little position, gave her a little office in the West Wing. They trying to work it out. Is she going to get paid? Is she not going to get paid? She going to get paid just from being in the office, okay? She's going to profit from that. So they say Andrew Jackson introduced all that. I thought that was another reason why Donald Trump might be looking up to Andrew Jackson politically and what have you. So let me play this short clip where this isn't from his weekly address. This is just a little short clip, but he actually went to Andrew Jackson's Heritage Foundation or something to celebrate his 250th birthday. So they had a birthday party for this old racist slaver person who was only classified as white because of slavery. Scot-Irishman Andrew Jackson. Just a side note, Scotland is voting right now or debating right now whether they want to still be part of the quote unquote United Kingdom, because see, traditionally, historically, England has oppressed the Scottish and the Irish. This is all documented history. So, but that's who Andrew Jackson was. So Trump gave like a long speech, man, something like a 22-minute speech, but let me see. Let me just play this from the Associated Press. Trump giving them the salute, military salute.
In my address to Congress, I look forward to 9 years to the 250th anniversary of American independence. Today, I call attention to another anniversary, the 250th birthday of the very great Andrew Jackson. And he loved Tennessee, and so do I, to tell you that. On this day in 1767, Andrew Jackson was born on the backward soil of the Carolinas. From poverty and obscurity, Jackson rose to glory and greatness, first as a military leader and then as the 7th President of the United States. He did it with courage, with grit, and with patriotic heart. And by the way, he was one of our great presidents. But he was also a flawed and imperfect man, a product of his time. It is the duty of each generation to carry on the fight for justice. My administration will work night and day to ensure that the sacred rights which God has bestowed on his children are protected for each and every one of you, for each and every American.
All right, so that was the Associated Press. So this was given to Congress. He wanted to. That wasn't in Tennessee. That was in Washington, D.C. Somebody says that when I was asking who was George Bush's ancestor, Prescott Bush, but the slaver, I think his name was John Herbert Walker Bush, or it might have been Henry Walker. I'm not sure, but they do trace their ancestry back to a slaver. So thanks, John. But yeah, Prescott Bush, I think it's Herbert Walker, I think is one of their ancestors. But he participated again in the transatlantic slave trade. Again, today is the International Remembrance Day for the transatlantic slave. But did y'all not just hear Bush there? Donald Trump there. That's the excuse they always use. But he has some flaws. He was a man of his time. You know, that's how they excuse racism and that he practiced slavery. But that ain't all he did. I'm going to tell you why they love Jackson. Because when he moved to Tennessee, he left this area of North Carolina, this Scot-Irish community, which also had a lot of free African Americans that also fought in the American Revolution. It was 400 that I came across, record of 400 free African American colonists that fought in the Revolutionary War that was from this area. So, but after the American Revolution, he ends up making his way to Tennessee. And there is where he really got into the militias, being part of these white militias, again, to keep black people in chains and what have you. The first police departments were the militias, the slave patrollers or whatnot. So he got into it that way. But Jackson was also known for waging wars on the indigenous people, whether we're talking about the Seminoles, which he could not defeat the Seminoles. Why did Jackson attack the Seminoles of Florida? Well, because escaped black and African enslaved Africans would make their way and join up with the Seminole indigenous tribes, and then they battled Jackson. That's why Jackson, he was going down there to bring these slaves back and put down this rebellion or what have you in what was known then as Spanish Florida, because the Spanish held that as a colony at the time. So Jackson is known for that. They try to say, some people try to tell you like he went down there and whooped them up, but really they fought to a standstill, and they had to sign a treaty, and those black people mixed in with the indigenous made their way and settled in Mexico. They were given safe passage out of Florida. So that's some history right there that Jackson was a part of, but he also stole a lot of land from the Cherokee, which we in our family have an ancestor who was part of the Cherokee nation before they were all sent off to Oklahoma on the Trail of Tears. He took a whole lot of their land. There was another tribe I had learned about in Louisiana. He's known for the Louisiana Purchase and what have you, but he was waging war on this one group of, let me pull up Jackson's profile. I have linked to it. You can find the links. He has a Wikipedia page where they give you the citations so you can then look up these books. The Creek campaign and treaty, where what happened, we can learn from this. Well, you had a civil war between the Creek Indians. You had the Upper Creek Indians, you had the Lower Creek Indians. The Lower Creek Indians wanted to assimilate into white supremacy and be like these colonists and whatnot. And so they had a better relationship with the Americans and what have you. So, but the Upper Creek Nation, they was like, no, we holding on to our cultural practices and religious beliefs, and just, no, we not finna become Americanized, and no, you need to get up off our land. So Jackson and them in Tennessee Volunteers or whatever they were called, exploited that. Divide and conquer. So they exploited that. And so that's how they ended up becoming in control of all of it. All right. So where did this land end up? All of these millions and millions of acres you done stole from indigenous tribes. You done murdered them. You done, just, put them in concentration camps and march them off to reservations, to places they ain't never been before. They've been here in North Carolina and in this whole region all their lives, going back, to the original founding of this country by indigenous folks. I forget the Mississippian culture and nation that existed here. And so they gave all that land to who? All these poor peasants, like not Malcolm X, but Martin Luther King Jr. said, they gave these poor peasants from Europe all of this land, gave them the spoils. That's why these poor, what the aristocrats they refer to as poor white trash, and they ain't really white. They only white in this system in America, but if they was to go to Europe, no, you're not down with the queen like we are. You part of the oppressed class then, So, but in order to get them to buy in to white supremacy, they gave them stolen land. These people ain't worked. The majority of white people in this country, especially, they come from Ireland, come from England, come from parts of Scotland. Very few of them actually has any kind of roots that they can trace back to the periods I'm talking about, American colonial times. Most of these jokers didn't come over here to the 1800s, about when Jackson became president, and he giving them all of this stolen land and what have you. So that's why he's known as a populist candidate. He talked big and bad against the rich and the wealthy. He was also against the Electoral College, which a lot of people now credit with electing Donald Trump. But his hero Jackson wanted to eliminate the Electoral College. You know why? Because it would have been mob rule then. If you outnumber all the rich people and you outnumber all, even though black people were still enslaved back then, and it's always been slavery, I should say, but the conditions of pre-1865 slavery at that time, they ain't voting. You know, so that's how he wanted to empower poor white people, was with the vote. He wanted mob rule. He didn't want the electoral college. Whoever gets the most votes win. That's what he was for. He didn't have his way, though. And so before we say, oh, we need to get rid of the electoral college, that's why we got Donald Trump today. Well, some of those people in the electoral college actually cast votes for Hillary Clinton and what have you. All of them didn't vote for Donald Trump like they were supposed to, according to him winning the popular vote in those states. But Jackson, he wanted it to be like Clinton. You can call them Clinton people, and people talking about that, Jacksonian Democrats. That's where they tracing it to, because they knew that poor white trash could get ahead if we got eliminated the electoral college, which back then was more than likely, we know, controlled by the rich, money, wealthy planter class and what have you. So from the terms of the black struggle, I say let's eliminate the whole system. I ain't trying to, debate which is better, the mob vote or the electoral college. No, this system is practicing slavery. We need to eliminate it and start over from grassroots. So, yeah, that's Jackson. The First Seminole War. Okay, this is where I was talking about. He took some troops down. He might have been part of the U.S. military at the time. I know Fort Jackson in South Carolina is named after him. But, yeah, he went down to Florida to lead a campaign in Georgia against the Seminole and Creek Indians. And he was also charged with preventing Spanish Florida from becoming a refuge for runaway slaves, as Spain had promised freedom to fugitive slaves. So critics later alleged that Jackson exceeded orders in his Florida actions. His orders from President Monroe were to terminate the conflict. Jackson believed the best way to do this was to eliminate them indigenous folks and formerly enslaved victims, to just put them down and what have you. But he wasn't able to put them down, though. Again, that's part of black history and indigenous history. So I can see why Donald Trump, Andrew Jackson appeals to Donald Trump. If we look at the nepotism, if we look how he uses populism in appealing to the masses of white people out there, yeah, he's running just like Andrew Jackson. He probably even styled his campaign after Andrew Jackson. All right, so that is what I think we need to study. The history of this country and these figures, when these crackers say, when these racist crackers, racist white crackers, let me be specific, start praising certain people, we need to look at those people and look at their lives, look at their history, see what they did, study their patterns and practices, because this can help you understand the system and how it operates, and it'll better assist you in coming up with a plan to dismantle it. So that is what I noticed about Donald Trump praising Andrew Jackson. Now, don't fall for that garbage about he was a man of his time and, oh, it was okay. Slavery was okay. It was legal back then, just like it's legal today. Still legal via the 13th Amendment. All these Fortune 500 companies, practicing slavery, using prison slave labor. The federal government operates a private prison called Unicor. Where's all that money going? So when we study the history of this country, especially when we talk about slavers and slavery, let's not allow ourselves be trapped mentally into thinking that that was a thing of the past when it's staring us right in the face today. And you see that they still hold these slavers in high regard. There's a reason for that. All right, so that is my program. I will be back on air, let's say Wednesday night with New Abolitionist Radio, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, where we discuss 21st century slavery and human trafficking in this system. Make sure that you look up or go to your search engine and put in Millions for Prisoners Human Rights March. Find that page. There'll be a human rights march for victims of 21st century slavery and human trafficking, legalized by the 13th Amendment on August the 19th, and it's going down in Washington, D.C. We want to see you human rights defenders out there, anybody who say they working on these issues. There's a lot of intersectionality when we talking about slavery, whether you are immigrant, whether you are Hispanic, whether you're a black person living in a city, if you're a poor person living in the country. Hey, it's a lot of you being targeted, and you're a commodity in this modern day system of slavery. So it intersects, and the root cause is slavery. Let's go dismantle it. So join everybody on August the 19th in Washington, D.C. That's the Millions for Prisoners Human Rights March. Peace and blessings to all. Recognize the fact you do live behind the enemy lines of USA Inc., and you should act accordingly. Peace.